If there's an orientating principle in my life, it's that I seek depth. One of the things that I'm just completely captured by at the moment is boxing.
Your partner can never fix you, but they can point out all your wounds and they can stick their finger in them.
You can't just intellectualize this stuff. There is an embodiment to the way that we engage in the world.
Yeah.
Life will present us with the people and circumstances to reveal where we're not yet free.
Hi, beautiful people. This is Pierre, and this is my podcast called Through the Fog. We are all on this journey trying to find our way. And I spend my life helping people and businesses find their way through creating maps and helping them figure out strategies and just trying to help them figure out who they are. So I write this daily letter that goes out to many, many people. And it's a really short and punchy thing. And what I wanted to do was to create something that is almost the exact opposite of that, but still has the same level of depth and meaning. So something that is long, that is insightful, that is obviously deep and really, really helpful and valuable to myself and to all of you. So thank you so much for listening and being a part of this and a part of this journey. So I've committed to doing 12 episodes. And my friend Louis Minard made the awesome music for the podcast. And my other friend John is the producer. So thank you all for teaming up together to make this happen. This is really great. So Through the Fog is about finding your way and interviews with interesting people on how they found their way. Not necessarily what they are doing, but more about how they got there. Like, why did they make the decisions they did, and why do they find themselves in this place, and how are they planning to move forward? And those type of things are really interesting to me, and I hope that this will help you and me find your way. So my very first guest on the podcast is someone who has done that, right? Who has found their way. Rob Paddock has become a close friend. And he is an extremely inspiring human being, an entrepreneur and a thinker, and just generally awesome. And he is very well known for founding GetSmarter, an online kind of education company that partnered with all these global universities and helped 200,000 professionals upskill. And that was acquired by 2U in one of South Africa's biggest edtech deals. And for him and his brother, obviously. And he's also the one behind Hubble Studio, and he now leads Valencia Institute. And what they're doing is they're pioneering low-fee online high schools. And the UCT online high school is really one of the largest, or not the largest school in Africa, South Africa at least. So, and Rob's journey is interesting, anything but sort of linear. And our conversation reflects that. We talk about violence and boxing and parenting and marriage and plant medicine and men's work and obviously education and wolves. Yes, we talk about wolves. So it's deep. It's wide ranging. I loved having this conversation, and I know that you'll get a lot from it. So if this episode really speaks to you, please share it with somebody who might need it, or leave a quick review. Follow the show, hit subscribe, all of that. It helps quite a bit to get it out there. So here is my conversation with my friend, Rob Paddock. Hey, Rob. Thank you so much for joining me today and chatting about your past and your future and all the things that you're up to. Tell me a little bit, where did we meet the first time? We've been circling each other for a while, and then we met.
Do you know, I remember it so clearly because it was at a SAICA conference, a South African Institute of Chartered Accountants conference, which was brilliant. And SAICA is a great organization. But then I somehow we came across each other in the crowd, and you started talking about vision quests. And I was like, hey, this is a little bit different to what I'm expecting at a Chartered Accountants conference. I'm going to gravitate hard to this guy. It was such a delight.
Yeah, no, that's it was almost feeling like a kindred spirits being pulled together by the universe or some weird shit like that. So that was awesome at an accountants conference of all the places in the world, right? So tell me a little bit, where do you find yourself now?
I guess geographically, so I'm in my home office And I will go deeper than that, I promise. But just to kind of set the scene, I am at my home office. We live on the coast in Cape Town. I've got 3 beautiful kids. I can hear one of them upstairs who is 5 months old, who has been an absolute angel, but is just starting to teeth now. That's what's happening right now.
Oh my word! And
So
remind me again, how old are your other kids?
we've got a 4-year-old boy, a 2-year-old girl, and a 5-month-old boy. So it's a really busy household, and I'm very grateful for the fact that the business that I now run is a remote first company. We do have a space that people can go to, at least employees can go to, but it is remote first. And the opportunities it's given me to be present with my family and to do things like school runs and nip in between meetings to have some quality time, it's just exceptional, man. So I'm at my home office right now. I've spent the morning between a couple of online meetings and meeting some people in person down in Hout Bay. I will this evening go for a walk on the beach. Finding myself in an incredibly vibrant space, shall we say, feeling very nourished at the moment.
Sure, man. That's a real privilege, and I like having kids that young can be such a difficult time as well. But tell me, who is Rob?
Father, entrepreneur, artist, musician, leader, bringer together of people. I would say if there's an orientating principle in my life, it's that I seek depth. I seek depth of connection with people. I seek depth in groups and what we can do in groups of people. I feel very increasingly curious about the spectrum of existence, at least in my own life, a lot of which I think I've had certain parts of my life that have been very, shall we say, there's a big green tick around certain emotions and ways of being that have always just been like, yes, okay, then like that's the way that I operate and that's my domain. And then there's been a whole bunch that just sit in the do not go there column. One of the things, if I was to define a theme in my life at the moment, is really exploring all of these aspects that have existed in the shadow for a very long time. And I mean, like really, really exploring it and finding the most incredible treasure in that space. So yeah, I feel very grateful to have lived the life that I've lived thus far, to have had the depth of experience that I've had, and I guess it's across a number of domains, right? It's business, it's family, it's health. It's I feel like I've lived quite an intense life, if that makes sense. It hasn't been too pedestrian.
No, I can't imagine you living a pedestrian life at all.
Yeah.
Tell me, what else? What are some of the jewels that you've picked up when you talk about depth? I mean, depth and wisdom. That's something for me that's really interesting. I came across this quote in the week from Epicurus, like the philosopher, and he gets a really bad rap, like because it talks about Epicurean being people who are just interested in like partying and eating and drinking and tomorrow we die, but he's actually quite deep. And then the one thing he said that struck me, he said the thing that you need to seek more than material wealth is wisdom and friendship. And I was like, I've never heard that before, in like seeking this depth and seeking like this depth of relationship. So if you were to think, like, if you were to expand on that, can double click into it and say, what sort of depth, what have you discovered that really like draws your attention? This is something I want to dig into.
And I find these things that they move in waves, and certain things capture me at certain times. And I think there's something quite mysterious about what it is that captures our attention at any point in time. I can't tell you why certain things just completely draw me in at one time, and yet a year ago, they just didn't represent anything for me. Right now, with some of the depth that I'm finding incredible value from is exploring the parts of me that have, it's the best way to phrase it, the parts of me that I have, I mentioned this earlier, but cast into this kind of shadow domain of like aggression, fighting, as an example. Like, this is just not a thing that I do. It's not the way that I was raised. I'd never even played sports like rugby when I was younger. This seemed like a bit somewhat of a heathen kind of concept. You know, that's the thing we used to do. Now we're sophisticated and we conduct ourselves with order and politeness and good civil society type manners.
Yeah.
And as an example, one of the things that I'm just completely captured by at the moment is boxing, and the experience of boxing, and what arises in me when I step into a space where there's two men who are voluntarily saying we're going to stand in front of each other and we are going to engage in combat.
Yeah.
That's what's about to happen, and it's going to hurt, and we're doing it with good faith, but we are going to touch parts of ourselves. And let me speak more personally. What happens in the space is that I touch areas of myself where, as an example, I might feel like I'm getting a bit bullied, and I've been pushed a bit into the corner, and I just feel like, you know, on the conduct that we've agreed, which is that we fight at kind of 50%, and we're not trying to bruise each other, etc. If I feel like I'm getting bullied, I can touch this space of abject rage.
Yeah.
Like, I can be fighting my best friend, and I can get to a place where I'm feeling sufficiently cornered and reactive that I can want to literally beat this guy in the face. And it's my best friend in the whole world.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what's so fascinating about this space, Pierre, I can't even describe how fascinating it is. You can't just talk about this stuff. You can't just intellectualize this stuff. There is an embodiment to the way that we engage in the world.
Yeah.
That I think that I haven't appreciated enough. I've been very head up most of my life. So maybe to answer your question more directly, I'm finding that there are these spaces where I'm engaging in very embodied practices, where I'm realizing where my triggers are, where my reactivity is, and it becomes an access point to what sits beneath that. And so, as an example, maybe just to open up very, very, very openly, I've, for most of my life, have prioritized harmony over boundaried, solid aggression that's not reactive, but that is just saying, no, that's your space and that's my space. And actually, I value myself enough to say no to that. I've prioritized instant harmony above anything that even has a flavor of combat. And so when I'm pushed into an extreme version of that, where I'm feeling pushed into the corner and I'm feeling a bit bullied, then that reactivity comes out from the back and it becomes incredibly explosive. But I need to touch that space in order to feel what sits underneath that, which is someone who is actually scared, and I am scared of being put out of connection and being hurt.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, okay, can I just be with that? Like, can I be with that for a bit? Can I actually just sit there in the space where I'm feeling hurt and I'm feeling bullied, and see what arises, and actually let those emotions arise?
Yeah.
And Pierre, the most amazing things start to happen, at least for me, off the back of that sort of engagement, which is that my now 41-year-old nervous system realizes that I'm no longer 4 years old, 6 years old, having these kind of formative experiences that are being shaped by forces way beyond me, but that, hey, I actually can take a punch, and it actually is okay to engage in combat, and that I can stand up straight, and that we are still going to have a big hug afterwards, even when we see things slightly differently, even when we've had to say no and you've had to say no. And here we are, like, still in the space now as adults. And again, you can talk about this stuff till you're blue in the face, but to embody it is a very different experience that I'm finding in the way that I'm now showing up in business meetings, in conflict with my wife, others. Very different.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can just imagine like that sense of violence. And you're so right that we sort of, and I think especially in a sort of modern society, Western society, I suppose, like being civilized. And so I wonder if it's this British heritage that we have somewhere. Often I find like in South Africa, we are often way more British than we like to admit, like very polite. And we say sorry like 1,000 times. Like you walk into a pole and you say sorry to the pole. Like it's like that sort of thing. Right. And allowing a space for that violence, because we're not just head. Like that sort of dichotomy between I am not my body. I am this little thing inside of a body, and then this body is going to go away, and then this little thing may or may not, go on, or whatever that is. Like this sort of weird dichotomy, which is not the way humans are, right? Like, and so I love that you said the violence, because I did Krav Maga like years and years ago, and it was the most difficult thing I've ever done in my freaking life. like getting beat
It's
up
hard,
like
eh?
that. Yeah, because
Yeah,
the way they train you is they beat you up. Like you have to feel
yeah,
what it feels like to
yeah,
get hit in the face. Like you're never
totally.
gonna like pretend to get hit in the face, and then when you get in a real
Yeah,
situation, you have to. It is so hard, and like that animal kind of nature that comes out
yeah.
is frightening at first, and then after a while, you're going, okay, this is actually pretty awesome. Like this is, and what is like you say, like what is underneath that? What is actually lying underneath
Mm.
that? And
Totally. And what is it? What happens when you experience the fact that you can actually take a punch and that you are okay? And at least for me, what I've started to realize is a lot of the way that I've moved through the world is by not feeling like I can take some sort of physical
mm,
assault. But what ends up happening is then I overcompensate by my mental scheming, and that I'm trying to constantly predict and predict what others are going to do and protect myself from even getting close to a situation where there could be confrontation.
yeah,
And that not only is that mentally exhausting, but it's also not it's also, at least for me, it's not been direct. It's a constant maneuvering and at least for me again a chameleoning of my being to be in harmony and to find myself in harmony, which is why I've just never gotten myself into something like a fight before.
yeah,
Because I can just always maneuver my way out. And again,
yeah,
these things always have a light and a shadow, right? Like that's also made me an incredible salesperson. I can, I can move and I can orientate around people in a way that makes me find harmony with them.
yeah,
But it also means that I can constantly be compromising my sense of self and just swallowing, pushing it down, which actually, the further those aspects of unexpressed self get pushed down, the more reactive and volatile they become. And that's the thing that I'm most thoughtful of is where is that reactivity and volatility within me?
yeah. Where's it actually going? I was it's like the if you talk about archetypes, I talk about it's sometimes the god of war, Mars. So there's like two really interesting ones that show up. The god of war, Mars, and Aphrodite, like the god of love. And I always tell people like these tend to show up, especially like in teenage years with kids. I've got teenagers now, as you know. So and you see, I'm like, and I see these archetypes pop their heads up. And it's like if you don't honor that emotion, that god of war, that like desire for like violence. And the word violence comes from the Latin vis, which means life, like life force. And if you don't direct that, like it's just going to come out someplace else, right? It's just going to come out in
Well
some
said.
sneaky, negotiating, manipulating way, maybe, or at some sort of, it'll pop out somewhere else, but it has to go somewhere. Like the gods will not be ignored, right? They are
Well
going to show
said.
up. And the same with Aphrodite. Like she also like needs to be honored. Otherwise she'll force her way through. So yeah, that's fascinating, man. I really like that.
I would, and again, just to kind of try to be as open as I can be, I would say that some of the ways that has historically come out in me is like passive aggressive. Just without even realizing that's what I'm doing, I'm not sufficiently going to put down
Yeah.
boundaries and protect myself in the moment. But then you can be sure as heck I'm scheming in the background. And again, I'm not a bad person. I'm not, not at least consciously trying to hurt people. But this is to echo your point. If we deny that life force,
Mm.
that in this case is violence, it will find its way out. You can be damn sure. Or at least in my belief system, it will become so compressed and metastasize in our system that it starts to manifest as some form of disease within the system.
Yeah. I can definitely agree with that. Tell me, what mission are you on right now? What are you working on right now?
Few things. One, I'm deep in the process of being a father, and what it means to be a father.
Mm.
I think I'm at a interesting stage in life where so we've had three kids. I'm now we're kind of closing that container. That is what we're going to do as a family. And to be more graphic, I had my vasectomy a couple of weeks ago.
There you go. Close the shop. It's done.
Close the shop. It's done. But I'm also having the experience of seeing my parents age,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is a really interesting space to be in, where I'm seeing the fact that we are this next generation that I've just always had the sense that, oh, but there's always, people that are older than us. I'm not old, like I'm not really a father yet. My father's still alive. And yet I'm seeing some more the fragility of the next generation up. I'm stepping into and feeling the call to step more and more into this role of father, leader, community orientator, and guide. And it feels like one of the biggest shifts of my life at the moment.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that I haven't been a leader in business in the past and so on, but there's somehow the fact that this is happening at the family level, I'm having a different experience in my system around it. So I guess in terms of the different thematic areas, the one is as a father and the mission of being a father and wanting to really do that role the best that I can. And I think intrinsically tied into being a father is, what does it mean to be a man? What does it mean to be a husband? What does it mean to, et cetera, et cetera. Within work, I'd say there's a fair amount of those of that parallel, that in parallel. Being a business leader, I'm the CEO of a company called Valencia Institute, which runs online high schools. We are currently the largest high school in the country, the largest private high school in the country.
Oh, wow. How many kids?
And so we have just under 5,000 students that are in our National Senior Certificate program, and then a very large number, which I won't expose publicly, but in our adult matric program. So it's a large organization serving many students from various from all around the country. We have a great employee base that is, again, working remotely, and that's its own challenge of figuring out how to lead in the context of a remote business, and how to forge ahead in what is now not just online students, but also an online workforce, and finding that space of sympathetic in between us, and alignment, commitment, direction, all the things that I would say from previous business experience are much easier to land on when you're physically co-located in space. But just lifestyle-wise, this is better. I think for a lot of our team are parents, and we're getting this kind of resounding feedback that this is where we want to be, is continuing trying to figure out how to do this well as a fully remote company.
Yeah.
So yeah, being a business leader is calling me, has continued to call me, I guess, my whole life, but I'm grappling with how to be the most effective leader in this space right now, and figuring out where is it that at least historically I've just been kind of, if I just work more, that is my best marker for success.
Yeah.
I know this is such an age-old challenge, right? But if I just push more and I just spend more time, that's my real internal marker for my contribution, as opposed to where am I actually adding value, and what is my highest and best contribution that is completely delinked from the amount of time that I spend. And I think, again, to share as openly as I can, I've realized over time that I've had somewhat of an addiction to suffering. And maybe that's a strange way of saying it, but I've felt like if I'm not suffering and I'm not carrying my load, and the burden that should be at least proportionately compared to others much higher than what others are carrying, then I'm not of value.
Yeah.
And that's something that I think is quite deep in our family line. I think that's something that I think a lot of people listening to this right now can possibly relate to, and it's played out in my life significantly.
Yeah.
Just being able to work harder than anyone, just like so damn hard.
Yeah.
And to give you a kind of pinnacle experience of that, we sold our business GetSmarter in 2017. I was at the NASDAQ, ringing the NASDAQ bell, and 4 days later, I was in Brazil doing an Ironman.
That sounds healthy.
That's the kind of, obviously, but the level of identification with this is just like, this is who I am.
Yeah.
Like, I can just fucking work. Excuse me.
No, it's fine. Don't worry.
Freaking work. And I can take it on. I can take on more, and I can push harder, and I will make more out of it. And it's astonishing that, again, like all of these things in life, it can be so productive, and it can give you so much external validation. But meanwhile, my system is crumbling. I'm getting so burnt out from this orientation in life that is completely running on autopilot.
Yeah.
And the moment that was revealed to me was in my one and only Ayahuasca session, where I literally had an experience of the medicine saying to me, you do not need to suffer to find peace.
Yeah.
And in that moment, to actually just let go of this entire identification with the identity that unless I'm carrying this load, I'm just not valuable and people aren't going to want me or need me. And to actually feel that physically released from my system was what followed was such bliss. For hours, Pierre, for hours and hours of just openness and spaciousness and a sense of tranquility that I just never experienced before. And I guess if I bring it back to the embodiment point, I think it's something I've found really interesting about the space of plant medicine is that a lot of what it does is help us get out of our head. We quite literally lose control with our prefrontal cortex and our ability to control our thoughts and the direction that this process is going in. And if you just keep releasing, it gets you deep into our bodies. And there is so much wisdom that we can find there. And when we experience that sort of thing somatically and at a cellular level, it fundamentally changes who we are.
Why do you think people, I think it's like a general theme in humanity, right? It's like, why do you think people feel the need to suffer? Or I think there's something underneath that. It's like the need to prove myself that I'm worthy. Why do we do that? Because it sucks. I think we all do it in different ways and it sucks and it's so bad for us. But we do that.
Completely. And I think I'll speak for myself as opposed to speaking for, in
humanity.
Generality. As if I carry the mantle for humanity. Pierre, I think that for me, it's that we live in there is a competitive dimension to this, to human coexistence. I think to ignore that is to be completely naive. And that to the degree that I can distinguish myself by hard work, by carrying a bigger burden, there's no doubt that there is a level at which that does distinguish you from your peers, and it does set you apart from your peers, and it does give you a level on the status hierarchy that can create more safety. But of course, that is, I'd say it's quite a crude tool to use to get there. And again, for me, this is most of my life been running on some level of autopilot. So I have a lot of compassion, for myself historically and for others for whom this program and the script is running. But underneath it all, I think I just want to feel safe. I just want to feel held in community and in connection. And to the degree that I can speak for humanity, I think that's a fundamental need that we all have. Is I want to feel safe and I want to feel like I will be that my place and space that I occupy relative to others will not leave me sidelined and out of the core group.
There's an interesting paradox. I'm speaking on paradox next week at a big investor conference. I don't know how I often get pulled into these things. I'm not going to speak to all these like hedge fund managers. So what we're talking about is a paradox and our lizard brains and anyway. So and there's a paradox there because humans we have this deep need to belong. Like we're deeply pack animals, right? Tribal creatures. Like I think we've evolved that way or we're created that way or whatever, so that we need one another. It's the best way to survive. But at the same time, and this is where the kicker comes in, is like we also want to know our status, like within that group. It's like, I want to be part of this group, but I want to be the cool kid in the group. Or, I want to be part of this business, but I want to be the leader.
Well said.
Like, and it's such a weird, and those things clash. They sort of fight one another. I want to be part of the group, but I also want to be the leader. And and then we drive and we make a decision. I suppose we make a decision really deeply about how are we going to get there? Which is what that's the idea behind this podcast, right? It's like, how do we find our way? How do we decide to find our way? And I think one of the default ways we try and find our way is we go, how am I going to win? Like, how am I going to be the top dog or whatever that is? And if that means working the hardest, or if that means suffering the most, or that means joy being the most famous one, then we decide that sort of in an unconscious way. I think as little kids, probably, we make that decision. I go, this is what I'm going to do. I need to prove myself by working harder than anybody else, or whatever that is.
Yeah, beautifully said, man. And I'll tell you what comes up for me as you speak is the tendency in myself, but I see it just pervasive in our society, is not being willing to dig deeper to the rather nefarious drives behind what we're doing.
Yeah.
And, a lot of this, again, is happening unconsciously, but not being willing to just, what is Jordan Peterson says that we should assume the worst reason why we're doing any activity.
That's true.
And really put the spotlight on that and spend a lot of time in interrogating whether that could be the majority reason why. Because, we always speak in the aspirational, it's about changing lives, and it's about creating a better society and saving the environment and so on. It's like, yes, absolutely. And it's also because we want to be anti-establishment, and because we feel bullied by the system that's failed us, we want to take it, so we want to tear it down. And and can we just have a real conversation about the plethora of drives that are intersecting when we do anything in our lives? Because otherwise, like, we're just back in that back on autopilot. And I think that's where a lot of the further that goes down the road, I think that's where a lot of the worst possible outcomes happen in life.
Yeah. How do you think we become? Oh, how did you? Let's talk about you. How did you become aware of like that inner motivation? I mean, you mentioned the ayahuasca ceremony, and that. Was there any other way, or somebody in your life, or person, or happening that you go like, oh shit, this is actually why I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm just trying to prove myself in this way, or I'm trying to show everybody that I can suffer the most. Like, how did that journey work? Like, how did you get to that? Thing?
Thanks, man. It's a really great question. I think it's multifaceted, but I would say that relationships have always been at the core of this, and being in relationship, and whether that's with my wife, who is just the most incredible mirror for me, and we have an agreement that she really led and that I've kind of followed, and now finally just through attrition succumbed to, which is that there's nothing so small that it's not worth fighting about.
Oh yeah. Oh, okay.
And that sounds like it could be pretty affronting, and like, why would you invite that into your world? But her orientation is like, no. Like, we are so in each other's space, and that when I see something that's in you, it is my duty to say it. And only now that it's in the relational field between us can we start to pass out what's yours, what's mine, what is truth. Because truth is this very evasive concept. It's like, what is truth? Well, there's the way I see it, there's the way you see it, there's all my unconscious drivers, there's all of your unconscious drivers. And the way that we're going to figure that out is by putting it into the space. And at least from her belief system, which I've come to thoroughly adopt and appreciate, is that every time you don't do that, that's another thing that goes in that little resentment closet. That's another thing that goes in the I'm going to punish you later, however unconsciously, because I'm carrying so much unresolved issues that it's going to come out later. And then when we're fighting in 3 months' time, we haven't fought, it's going to be about everything. It's not going to be about this one specific thing. It's going to be about everything. And I'm not saying it's everything. I'm saying it's about this one thing. Yeah. But actually, it's about the full backlog of things that we have not yet dealt with. And I think that relationships, this is a relational dimension. This is a space where us, as in contrast to someone else, we can't see ourselves clearly. We just can't. We need the people around us to mirror back to us what they're seeing, and then we need to work through the nitty gritty of what's yours and mine to actually figure out what the heck is going on within me, and why is it that I've been unwilling to even see this until you've said it? And often what I find now, Pierre, is that when Ash says something to me that is the most immediately, shall we say, that finds the most reactivity in me, I'm like, okay, like, here's some good work. Like, now we're starting. Yeah, now we're going to go deeper, because there's layers to this when I'm in that reactive space. Yeah. The other thing I would say is that life is the most incredible teacher. God, creator, is the most incredible teacher. And my WhatsApp status for years, which is a quote by a guy called Peter Crone, is that life will present us with the people and circumstances to reveal where we're not yet free.
Oh, wow.
And that has been my absolute experience of life, is that it has a way of coalescing these experiences that when we engage with them, and that we come up with resistance against them, it will just be like, cool, if I try to avoid this, I'm going to double down on this, and then I'm going to go again, and then I'm going to go harder, and then I'm going to go into your body, and then and it just goes until we say, I'm so backed into the corner, I've got nowhere else to mentally maneuver out of this. I have to be with this.
Yeah.
I have to be with this.
Yeah.
I have to sit in the fire of this experience, of this shame, of this pain, of this whatever the experience is. And only from that place can I actually transcend. Because I don't think us as humans, and again, I'll speak for myself, like, I don't think we change easily. I don't think we want to change.
We don't. No, we don't. We want to be on the couch and watch Netflix. That's what we want to do.
If it could just be cruisy and carry on, like, it would just be great. And yet where the gold is always is on that edge, is right in deep into that pain body where we find it. So I find that, relationships absolutely, coming back to your question, how do we find these spaces? It's like relationships, number one. And life, God experience, absolute, like, in there as well. And then I've had a men's group for a very, very long time, which is actually just drawn to a close after almost 6 years. I found that to be incredibly powerful. I believe very strongly in men's work. I think that it's desperately needed in today's society. And I think that with the right container and the right kind of rules of engagement, it can be completely transformative for men. And maybe that's something we can talk about more if you're interested. And then, plant medicine. I have worked with psychologists in my life, and I find it very helpful. But maybe I can say this: I think a lot of traditional psychology, it helps me understand the maths of the problems, but it's very conceptual. It doesn't. A lot of the time, it doesn't allow me to transcend at a cellular level the underlying neuroses, the underlying belief systems. It's like, cool, I can see it more clearly, I can catch it in the moment, but what I've found, and I really haven't done a lot of this, but every time I've done it, it's been incredibly profound. But what I've found with plant medicine, and plant medicine is just another technology, as would fasting, as would sacred rites of passage, etc. But they're one of, I think, a suite of technologies that are available for us to get beyond our mind. And I've found incredible value in that space over the last few years. But done with a huge amount of diligence, control. Like to do that sort of thing at a party is so different from doing that in a container with a really, really seasoned facilitator, and a strong integration process afterwards. That's something I'd say, is that the work starts at the end of the medicine. That's when the real work starts. And to not have the guidance and the counsel and the accountability for that, I think is such a miss with the way that a lot of plant medicine is being experienced in Western society right now.
Sure. Well, that's a lot. Rob, you just dropped so many things there, like marriage, life, men's work, plant medicine, like about, how you actually find your way, or how people could find their way. I don't know which one to tackle. Marriage is an interesting one. I am like, I get so, I am not obsessed with marriage. I'm always like on a mission to get people married. And I think, or I realize that in our kind of culture and society today, marriage is sort of maybe fallen out of fashion a little bit. Although the wedding industry is still really massive, like multi-billion-dollar industry, even though the divorce rate is like 50% or something. But, because it's such a gift, right? It's such a gift. And the same with myself. Like, I've been married for 20 years now, and it's such a gift. And it's not, one of my friends always says, marriage is not there to make you happy. It's there to make you holy. Like,
beautiful,
right? How cool, how good is that? Like, not there to make you happy. It's there to make you holy. Because that thing that you said on, just even there's nothing too small to fight over. I love that, right? Because that's the gift, really. It's like my wife the other day said, she thinks like the best metaphor for marriage is like a buddy system. Like when you go scuba diving, it's like you have to always check that your buddy is okay, right? And so that's your job. And when you notice that your buddy is not okay, you have to do something about it. You can go like, dude, I can see that you're suffering here. I can see like this is really triggering you, or this is really terrible for you, or you're being a real dick here now. Like you need to and that's where the gift of it comes, But sometimes I think people just wait for, I don't know what people wait for or expect in marriage, expect somebody to fix them, but they don't fix you. Like that's a trick, right? Like your partner can never fix you, but they can point out all your wounds and they can stick their finger in them all the time. So then you can know exactly where they are. You're like, oh, that really hurts. And then you need to go fix it. Like they
Completely.
can't save you, right? It's yeah, I think it's extremely
And
powerful.
you mentioned that marriage is falling out of fashion, and I think that's well said. And I think it's one of the greatest tragedies at the moment that's happening in modern society. For me, the ideal of marriage is that you commit until death do you part.
Yeah.
And what that does for the container that you're speaking about, for the fact that in relationship, you're going to be constantly mirroring and being able to point out each other's challenges and wounding and so on, is that it actually creates a level of safety around that says, I'm here. Like, I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah.
And when we fight today, it's so that we can make tomorrow better, because we're going to be together until death do us part. And one of the principles that Ash and I landed on very early in our marriage is that we will never threaten divorce, ever.
Yeah.
If you threaten divorce, it's because you're serving me papers that day.
Yeah.
Like, you've decided and you're there, but you don't. The sanctity of that commitment, and that's why it must be a commitment before God. That is to say that we are going to be we are committing to something that is bigger than us.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it really does become bigger than you when not only is there a ceremonial element to it, but when there's children. And when you actually you become a creative force as a marriage.
Yeah.
You literally make life. And for me, I don't know what else defines a spiritual, godlike, it made in the image of God type experience than being able to create life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what does it mean to create life and to provide a safe container for them to experience the ups and downs of life?
Yeah.
And you just have to take one look at any literature about the relative experience of kids who are raised by a married couple versus not. And again, there's some unbelievable single moms, single dads that are out there that have gone through challenging times. There's not to say there's not unbelievable heroes, but to the degree that we can commit and create a container that is the most conducive for kids to have the most optimal outcomes. It's marriage.
Yeah.
That's what it is. And to think that that's something like that is not, that should just be played with, and we should open up the marriage and we should play like I'm sorry, no.
Yeah.
Actually, no. Let me leave it there.
Yeah, no, it's very true, because I can rant about it as well. So I'm glad we feel the same. Because it's like the words of Dr. Phil when I hear about open marriages and all these kind of interesting arrangements, and I'm like, how's that working for you? Like, really? Like, if you really talk about it and you're really honest, how is that working for you? And often you find that it's not. Often, almost always, you find that it's not. And I'm happy to have a debate with anybody on it, but I don't think it is. And you're right. Like, I think the creative act of bringing children into the world and raising children with your partner is the most creative thing that you'll ever do in your life, right? It's like, really good friends of ours, married couple, are both really well-known artists, and they made a very tough decision a few years back whether or not they're going to have children, because their careers are going international and that they're really, really well-known, and then they decided not to. And for them, I was really sad, because I think they'll make just great parents. But at the same time, they're both extremely creative people. And their day-to-day job is literally making art, like creating. And I imagine that's like, if you're not going to have kids, obviously the people that can't have and all of that, but if you're not going to have kids, you better be doing something extremely creative with your life. You better be building something incredibly awesome for that. And it's the same thing, like, to circle back, and I like corporate speak, circle back to circle back, or reference again the honoring, like the violence. It's like honoring the creation, like honoring the creative force inside you again. Like saying that if it's not going to be raising kids together with somebody else, then what are you going to do? What are you going to do with this life? Just like party and make money and do what? What are you actually going to do? And how do you then like carry your share of the burden, to talk about that again? Like, how do you to help move humanity forward, right? So I absolutely agree with you.
It's hard not to see the world from my vantage point. It's the only thing I've got, but the what's happened for me after having kids is not only have I learned what actual service is about and actual humbling of myself for someone else's needs is about, but it has led to a level of navel gazing introspection that I think is at a very unhealthy level in our society generally. And again, a lot of if I'm seeking to improve at the moment, it's so that I can better serve my kids. It is less, maybe I can say it this way, the existential crisis that I think a lot of Western society finds itself in could be significantly solved by coming into a partnership, dealing with the significant challenges that come with that partnership, but doing it anyway, and having children.
Yeah.
And I know that sounds so traditional and so conventional, but guess what? Like, that's our entire history.
Yeah.
That's our entire lineage. That's our entire evolutionary path. It's so deep in us.
Yeah.
And to think that now it's just like, cool, I can just make some quick alternative choices. It's like, yeah, maybe you're one of the exceptional ones that can do that and that can do it well and that can find happiness and fulfillment. But don't be so damn sure.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's true. Like, well, what is the way? There's one, I can't remember his name now. The person who said, if you're trying to figure out what to do with your life, if you're trying to figure out what's the next step, what's the thing? And his answer was, what is the tradition telling you to do? Yeah. Like, what has worked in the past? And like tradition, as somebody said the other day, traditions are experiments that worked. And then people keep on doing them.
Beautifully said.
Yeah, it's such a good line. Traditions are experiments that worked. And it's like, if you're wondering, what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do with my life? Like, what is the tradition telling you? What is your culture, your people group or whatever? Like, what is expected of you next? And that used to be marriage. Like, it used to be marriage. Like, going, there's a pattern. You go to school, you grow up, then you get married, you have kids. Like, it's part of the pattern. And that's sort of fallen. It's not part of the plan anymore. And then I sit often with people and friends who are in their late 30s and 40s, desperately lonely and trapped, because now they're trying to find somebody, but they sort of missed the gap where everybody got married, and now the only people that you're left with are like not really the people that you maybe want to marry, and it's devastating. And it's fascinating to me, not fascinating to me, it's interesting that these same people were very often very anti-marriage in their 20s, and independence and this and that, and then later in life they go, oh crap, like I think I made a mistake, like I should have maybe gotten married when everybody was getting married, right? And now they're desperately lonely, and it breaks my heart. Like it's one of the great sort of atrocities of life, I think. So that's really terrible. I wanted to focus in on that line from Peter Kroner. Did you say Kroner? Crone?
Peter Crone.
Peter Crone. Yeah. I follow him as well. Like, it's an interesting guy. He's like talking about your life, like listening to your life, and listening to your life to figure out what you need to work on, what you need to find out. So if you were to think, what in your life is really inviting you now? I mean, you're talking about fatherhood and all of that, but maybe in like more professional sense as well. What do you think is really like, what is your life telling you right now? Where should you go?
Life at the moment, I feel, is inviting me back into a lot more creativity. And again, this is just a question of when I'm having an experience in life where I'm just feeling increasingly stuck and trapped, and I haven't regularly felt like that in my life, like kind of stuck, trapped, maneuvered, and that's my experience of life. It's like, okay, what's underneath that? That's a whole exploration. But part of the medicine for that, I think, is to re-engage in, at least for me, I'm an incredibly creative person. I grew up, you and I have chatted about this, but I grew up in a family of, my father's an incredible folk musician, brother's a great guitarist, my sister is now making the most incredible music. But I studied music and drumming and percussion when I was younger, and just that creative expression is something that has had less focus in my life over the last few years.
Yeah.
And I guess what's interesting is that business is actually quite creative, and there's a huge amount of creative problem solving, and the dreaming up of a new concept and the rallying of people towards something new and the storytelling. There is something very creative about that. But what I found with business is that the creativity is the fire is quite bright in the beginning, and then it by necessity becomes more organized, rigid, focused, etc. And so I think for me as an entrepreneur, one of the things I'm thoughtful on is how not to create more chaos in the business, because creativity is also chaos.
Yeah.
Like, to be clear,
Yeah.
it's not chaos and order are one of the continuums that we experience in life, and creativity is definitely further towards chaos, and there's often a lot of destruction that comes with that creative force. And that's very, very hard. And I would say in the business that I'm running now, I have tended for the last few years towards more chaos than is helpful and that is wise.
Were you creating the chaos?
And yeah, in some ways, I think so. And not exclusively, but yes, I think so. And I think that part of my learning at the moment is where to infuse that creative force in a way that can be accretive to the business and that can help with its evolution, as opposed to everything needing to be a revolution. Like the business does not need to reinvent itself every 5 minutes. It doesn't. It's not good for our customers. It's not good for our staff. It's not good that,
Yeah.
And that's been a challenge for me, is trying to find where that appropriate infusion of creative force is within the business context. And maybe I can say it slightly differently. I think I've got more creativity in my system than the business on its own can handle.
Yeah.
So I think finding appropriate creative outlets for that has been really, really important. But then also the way that we are currently working, we're working on something that I can't speak about publicly yet, but is going to be incredible game changer in the South African education landscape. But that is tangential and concurrent to the main business that we're running and the schooling system that we're operating. And that, I think, is a wiser way of thinking about my role as a creative and as an entrepreneur, as opposed to disrupting the main stable, is actually like adding to it in a parallel stream.
Yeah.
And I know I'm speaking in riddles here, but without being able to speak about the specific thing that we're doing, that's the kind of way that I'm orientating towards that work, right?
Yeah, that seems that seems really wise. Like not disrupting internally and like breaking the actual business, but like disrupting the market or the external side. I think that obviously makes a lot of sense. How do you make decisions?
Slower than I used to.
Oh yeah, it's a little bit of wisdom.
Holy smokes! I think that there is, again, one of these things that we need to constantly counterbalance, is that speed to decision making and deliberation and analysis. And one of the things I found is that in business, quite a lot of business, especially as it gets bigger, rewards very slow analysis to the point of just like, just never actually making enough decisions, or certainly not making decisions fast enough.
Yeah.
And my tendency is like, go on gut, move quickly, break stuff, it's fine. And I think that I've been too much that way orientated. So now I'd say I'm hopefully landing closer to the middle, where it's mainly feedback from others that is helpful.
Yeah.
And it's input from others. And again, in the same way that in my marriage, it's the reflection from someone like Ash. It's trying to pull that collective intelligence together, but not letting the general spiral of corporations, which is everyone manage their backs and ensure that their risk is that the leap is not, the potential failure of this leap cannot be squared peg or cannot be put directly on them.
Yeah.
Is that you've actually just got to move. Like you do need to move, get enough information and then move. And I don't know of a better way to think about it, Pierre. Like I do think there's a gut instinct element to it, and that sometimes, regardless of the feedback that I'm getting, we need to just I've got this strong conviction that we need to move anyway. Maybe I'll share one more thing that I've only recently started experimenting with, and my relationship with God is a interesting one, I guess you could say. subscribe to a formal religion as such, but I have a deep sense of the divine.
Yeah.
And an experience of the divine. And one of the things I've started doing is, when there's big decisions to make, is praying. And praying to say that if this is the thing I'm thinking about doing, if this is the thing that I should be doing, I'd like to see 3 clear signs that this is the way that I should move.
Yeah, 3
within
nogal.
the next week.
Yeah.
Like 3 nogal. Yeah. And for whatever reason, I heard that, and I thought it was a helpful rule of thumb.
Yeah.
And I've started doing it. And holy smokes, has it been consistent in delivering?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just crickets, like there's just nothing. And other times it's like bam, 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 3 signs.
Yeah.
As clear as you can.
Clear as you can.
And I find that mystery incredibly compelling, and I find it very nourishing.
Yeah.
To have that dynamic in what previously has just been a head-bound orientation towards the world. How rational can I get about this?
Yeah.
I think there's something in that space that I'm right at the beginning of experimenting with.
Yeah.
and loving. Let me not say experimenting with, of conversing with.
Yeah. I love that. That's really beautiful. And there's definitely something to that. Like trusting the gut, trusting the intuitive, trusting them, the mysterious side of it. More than just when we do strategy sessions with businesses, we always go like, people ask, where are the spreadsheets? I'm like, no. This is not that type of strategy session. Like we just put in the numbers on the one side so they make the graph go up on the other side. Like that's not that's one, not strategy. And a lot of it is conversations and like gut feels and then having the courage like to be brave, ironically, to be brave and like make decisions, like to say, we're doing this, not this. And I've seen that a couple of times where founders or CEOs just go, we're not doing this, we're doing this, and being very clear about it. And even though, if somebody in the team goes, yeah, but maybe we should, and they're like, no, that's not who we are. Yeah. This is what we're going to choose. This is what we're going to do. And there's really power in that. And so you're also like trusting your gut and then holding that paradox about getting feedback from others. And then as well, listening to your heart, listening to your gut, to your gut, listening to God, and trying to read the signs of your life, and trying to figure out what is the next thing to do. What are some of the worst decisions you've made?
Huh. It's yes, that's a really it's it's hard as cliche as this sounds, but like I don't look back on anything thinking, oh, that could have been different. I think that it couldn't have been any different because it wasn't. And it happened, and now I sit with the consequences of that.
Yeah.
And so there have been a lot of things that I've decided, especially in business, that where the consequences have been something that have created unbelievable challenge, suffering, etc. for me and others.
Yeah.
But, to the degree that we're having somewhat of a philosophical discussion, like I just don't know that it could have been any other way besides from my mental conjecture about what that scenario could have entailed. So jeepers, I mean, I'm so thoughtful on business decisions that I've made to grow too quickly, to hire too many staff, to start initiatives that, when people have signed up for one of our blended learning schools in the past, and when we've then subsequently closed that school down within 2 years, that actually is that's a meaningful challenge for a kid who's in high school, that like they were part of the school, they were drawn to it, they thought that this was their thing, and now you're closing it.
Yeah, sure.
And I think this has been an unbelievable tension operating in the education space generally. I'm certain that more innovation doesn't happen in education because the stakes are very high.
Yeah.
You think about what innovation is, it's trying new things. It's doing things differently to the way that they've always been done. But guess what happens when you try new things? Like, not everything works.
Yeah.
And not everything, you might even be able to find something that works and can provide something of value to a customer, but you can't get enough customers to pay for it, and therefore it's not sustainable, and therefore it closes.
Yeah.
And when it comes to kids in their education, that's a hell of a risk to take. Really, man. Like,
yeah.
It's a real thing. And not that all of us as humans, whether they're kids or otherwise, are not gonna have experiences in their life where they expected one thing and they got something else, or they started on a path and the path then closed down. Like, that's also life. But to the degree that we can reasonably control that, I fully understand why there's not more innovation in education, because the stakes are very, very high. And so, yeah, man, I sit with a lot of that. Like, and I've had to do a lot of work to, to process what I should have taken more responsibility for and what I should have been more thoughtful on.
Yeah.
And there's in typical entrepreneurship, it's like build fast and break stuff.
Yeah.
It's rapid experimentation and prototyping so that you can throw 90% of it away so you can finally hit on the thing that is product market fit. Like, that's the world of entrepreneurship by and large. But when you're building something that is so it's a cornerstone of someone's life at a point, especially when they're kids, and in our case, high schoolers, that's a big deal, man. Like, that's a big deal. So no, I sit with a lot of that, like, and think about that very carefully, and think about my role in this landscape, which I still care enormously about, and I'm still doing a lot of work in. But I think about this more as, and this is what one of my dear colleagues has framed it this way. This is a space of evolution, not revolution.
Yeah.
Like,
I like that.
You want to incrementally evolve the idea, as opposed to thinking that upending it and ushering in the new is the wisest path.
Yeah.
My experience in that space is when I try to be too revolutionary in the space, it bites, and it bites hard.
Yeah.
And when you fail real people.
Yeah.
And that's bloody hard to live with, man. That's really hard to find peace with.
Yeah.
And so I've got jeepers. I've made lots of hard decisions, bad decisions, decisions that have had unintended consequences that I would not have desired, and was certainly not my intention in setting out. And I think I give myself some grace, because I don't know how else we move the system forward. We've got some unbelievable challenges in our education system, which are just getting worse, Pierre. And we could have a whole education focused chat, but like, change is needed. There's no question about it. But this is the risk, and this is the price that you pay when you do try take big swings at this sector.
I mean, it's a really it's a fascinating topic as well, because I think often, especially in education, or the people who make the decisions that affect the kids are usually don't have any skin in the game. Like, they don't get held responsible for their decisions and their actions, right? So they make decisions on a very high level, and then it plays out terribly at the bottom, and then they just move on with their lives, or they get re-elected or not elected, or if they are elected officials, right? So that sort of disconnect between, I'm making these decisions, but I'm not responsible for the consequences, or I don't feel the result of the consequences. And like, I think you just being aware, at least, and feeling that pain and that tension is a pretty good sign. I'd be really worried if you weren't feeling that at all. Like, what are some of the ways, are this, or maybe there aren't, I don't know, some of the ways that you kind of keep yourself accountable, or keep in touch with the kids on the ground, or what the organizations are doing to not disconnect? Because it feels like not easy. It feels like one could easily, like, so guard yourself against the consequences of your decisions, because it's so hard to, I mean, especially if somebody, this is their high school, and then you have to close their high school, and you could blunt yourself. And I noticed that some founders and people tend to blunt themselves through the results of their choices. Is there any way that you kind of keep yourself real, or in any way that you keep your heart broken?
Yeah, it's a really great way of phrasing it. And I think that's, as someone who wants to please, and I would say that that's been a big part of my orientation in life, avoiding confrontation so that I can please and be in harmony and so on. Feedback about when we're doing less than a perfect job has always been a really hard thing for me. So yeah, I can certainly say that there's been times where I've felt that pull to run away from it, and I'd say there's even been periods, maybe not more than a month or two at a time, but like where I have just been like, I actually, my system just can't take any more of this right now. Like I'm just pulling a bit back from feedback, from NPS scores, from our learning analytics data, etc. But no, by and large, Pierre, I think one of the interesting things about the way that we run our education model is that it is digital, and so that you've got the digital footprint of every single student, and we can see where engagement is up and where it's down, and how marks are tracking in real time, et cetera, et cetera. So I feel very close to the action on the ground, and you know, I guess I'm a person that if you want to get hold of me, there are means to get hold of me, and so I do hear from parents, I hear from stakeholders in the sector, etc. But there's a healthy side to that, and then there's also a very unhealthy side. I think one of the hard things in education is that you've got this interesting triad between the school and all the people that are playing their supportive roles there, the child who actually has to do the work, and then the parent who, especially in our context where it's fully online, has to be engaged, has to provide a level of supervision and oversight in order to make sure that the student stays on track with their studies. They're not physically present in our care. And you actually need all three of those working together.
Yeah.
What we call the learning triad to have an effective academic outcome and a student who is focused and successful and so on.
Yeah.
And that when things don't work, who do you point to, and what level of responsibility is who willing to take, I think is a insignificant challenge to try and figure out. And one of the ways we've been trying to increasingly solve that is just through data. It's like, cool, we know that if you as a parent are not checking the Connect Ed app, which has got all of your students' data, which is presenting it in the super simple interface about what they're doing, not doing, etc. If they're not checking that 4 times a week, like we can see student outcomes dropping off a cliff.
Yeah.
If learners aren't studying for 5.5 hours per day, we can see how their grade averages fall off a cliff. And yet, I guess the challenge is that then when you have kind of allegations of, hey, you didn't do, we had this recently at the beginning of the year, hey, you didn't do your job as a school, but we can see, we know which learner's making that claim or which parent's making that claim, but your child has only been studying for 1 hour a day, even though we've sent you over 100 messages to say, this is a problem, please get your child back on track. Like,
Yeah.
there's a point at which I refuse to take responsibility for that.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not, you can say that it's us, you can say that it's me and that it's me, but actually these three have to work together in order to make this ecosystem work. And if I feel confident that we've done our job, which there's been some times that I haven't felt like we've done the best job, I think we've done a somewhat good enough or at other times plenty good enough job, but where I know that we've done our job and it's clear that your child hasn't put in the effort, I'm sorry. That just it's hard to engage in that further emotionally and feel like, flip, we really need to introspect here. It's just okay, like that's what it is.
Yeah. No, that's I mean, it's a complex problem. I've experienced that little triad as well in some of the work we've done with coaching and kids as well, and parents, where the kid is the user, to use a terrible term, and the parent is the client, and then the conflicting ideas between what people want and how to really keep happy. Really difficult to navigate.
And we incidentally configure our orientation in the same way. With the service provider, our client is the parent, our user, and again, that's a horrible term, but our user is the student.
Yeah.
And that it's an incredibly complex dynamic to navigate.
Yeah.
It's not everyone loves being in school.
Yeah. Few people do. Well, some do. I wanted to just a little bit of questions on education as well. If you were king of all that was, and you can change education in one fell swoop, what is 1 or 2 things that you change?
Jeepers. I'm very inspired and intrigued by the voucher system that's happening in the US, where basically parents get the subsidy that's currently allocated on parents' behalf to state schools gets redirected to the parents so that they can choose on their own volition what school they would like to put that money to. Whether it's a private school, whether it's a public school, whether that's a charter school, something in between, they get to choose. And my fundamental belief and experience is that when one of the things that the private sector does really well is like, if we don't do a good job, people stop coming to us.
Yeah.
And they stop paying.
That's the free market.
And then you're done. And then you're done.
Yeah.
That's just the
Yeah,
end.
yeah.
Whereas with government services, if you're the government and you don't do a good job, well, okay, where the subsidy still keeps coming in, but that's just that.
Yeah.
And you just can't argue with the unbelievable efficacy that's being shown with the voucher system in certain states in the US.
Yeah.
So I'm very thoughtful on that. I think that it takes time for that system to mature. I would never say turn it off and turn it on. I would phase it in over time, etc. But I would think very carefully about that. I would. I mean, this is a radical one, but if we think that we've seen the disconnect between education and employment now, we are going to get we have a tsunami that is taking place right now with the rate of change that's happening in industry because of artificial intelligence and more. And in a country like ours, it took us 10 years to get a coding and robotics curriculum approved.
Yeah.
To move through the system so that it's now incorporated in the CAPS curriculum. It literally it was approved a week before that big ChatGPT release, which then basically made a lot of the coding languages that are in coding and robotics just like nigh obsolete, or just requiring a very different role. So maybe just to clarify, things like coding mathematics, they're still really helpful, but not necessarily because you need to be able to do the coding, but because it's almost like in the same way that going to gym is good for your body, not because the gym is the activity itself, but it prepares you to do sport out there.
Yeah, for sure.
Coding and mathematics is like gym for your brain.
Yeah.
And it's a really good thing for kids to do, but not because now you're going to become a C++ programmer, because that world is just completely changed overnight.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I think moving towards a system, and this is very easy to say and much harder to do, but moving towards a system that is more project based, that is way less focused on high stakes assessments, that are where the big change now is like, kids are using AI all over the place. And they're going to be using that now for their lives. They're also going to be using it by the time they move into the workplace, and it'll actually be encouraged to make them more effective in the workplace. But it's completely not allowed in the preparation or the completion of any task as it relates to high stakes assessments, national senior certificate, etc.
Yeah.
And that's just a massive disconnect.
Yeah.
The best
Absolutely.
quote I've heard about AI is that you will not be replaced by AI. Someone who uses AI more effectively than you is going to replace your role.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's the game, man. Like, how well, at least in the digital economy, how well can you use these tools?
Yeah.
And to what degree then can you differentiate yourself on the things that AI can't do, and the human-to-human activity, and the psychosocial, socio-emotional, like that whole domain of leadership, bringing people together, orientating. There's a whole world there that's still going to need a lot of our work. So yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of changes that I'm not sure we're going to make fast enough, and I think, in fact, I'm sure we're not going to make them fast enough as any government systems, and I think that it's going to continue to drive a private sector alternatives who are willing to push the boundaries more and be fundamentally more closer to the curve of where industry is being pushed.
Yeah. That's so super. I mean, when ChatGPT came out, I immediately got it for both our kids. I was like, you play with this, use it for everything that you do. And
Totally.
So they use it when they do research and to help them write and like all sorts of different things to play with it. Because you have to, you're right. You have to get used to the tools. And I love that quote of like, it's going to, somebody that'll use the tool better than you can use the tool is the person that's going to take your job. It's not the AI. I really like that. We're tool makers, and that's why it's so fundamental to what it means to be human. Like everything around you is a tool that we've made. Even art is a tool, like a tool for beauty.
Well said.
And then like prohibiting AI, prohibiting it in schools. So it's like prohibiting pens or prohibiting like you're cheating when you're using a hammer to nail a nail in. It's like, what are you going to do? Use your teeth or use your hand because it's cheating? Like, when is it cheating? There's this great story or this joke about this guy. He's a drummer. So to your music experience, he's a drummer and he decided, no, he wants to be more authentic. So he's going to make his own drums. So then he went on this course and like learn how to make his own drums. And then afterwards, like, no, he actually wants to be more authentic than that. He's going to tan the skin from the goats by himself, and then tan the skin, and then like stretch the drums, and then he did that, learned how to do that. And after a while, he thought like, this isn't authentic enough. Like, if I really want to be true to my craft, I need to, raise my own goats. And then I'm going to raise my own goats, and then I'm going to, get the skin and then make the drums and stuff. And then the guy goes, oh, well, that's really fantastic and awesome. Like, how's your drumming going? And he goes, no, I don't have time for that with all the goat raising and skin tanning. Right. So we make tools for a reason. Like, we should be using them. But I love that. I mean, the voucher system is an interesting one because it's like trusting the free market system, right? Like trusting that capitalism will do its thing, and like with its incentives and pulls and pushes will actually create quality, right? I really like that. That's really awesome. What is one thing that people just don't get about you?
I think I'll make this comment with some context. I think so. One of the things about having built some businesses and had some outward success with those businesses is that you get kind of painted as a particular archetype, and particularly in South Africa, kind of white capitalist.
Yeah.
And at least at its most effusive, that's celebrated by the entrepreneurial community and others. But I think there's always this push and pull in at least in my experience of anything kind of public, where people love that person to get pulled down.
Yeah.
As well.
Oh yeah,
So,
that's true. We like to see our heroes fail.
Completely, and certainly not to express that I'd be a hero for anyone, but just I think that I've had a sense from some of the media attacks I've had, and it's been astonishing, Pierre. Like one of the things I've learned in no uncertain terms is like, because you read something in a newspaper does not make it true. Or because you see something in an online article, like I'm reading stuff that allegedly is about me, like in a major publication, like no, you've taken a seed of truth there and you've turned it into like what? Like what? Yeah. That there is, I guess, to answer your question, that there's the sense that there are just these, that I might be this stiff, white, uncaring, just completely separate from the world capitalist who just wants to just take advantage, like do whatever I can to get as much as I can, and I'm just not. Like, I don't know how else to say it. Like, I'm just not. I care deeply about the people I work with. I care deeply about the customers that I serve. I hope that I serve with any work that I've done has been, to the degree it's been driven by unconscious drives, that has been the intention nonetheless has been good, and in the hope that there can be more harmony, some more peace, some more space in the world, and yeah, it's hard, man. Like I'm feeling that kind of lump in my throat right now. I'm feeling that little kind of that feeling that goes kind of up behind my ears just before I start getting really emotional about something. Like it's really hard to be attacked. It's really hard to be misrepresented. It's really hard to, and it hurts.
Yeah.
Like there's actually a real consequence of that. Like it really fucking sucks.
Yeah.
And to the degree that there's things that I've done that we can make amends for, like flipping all day long. Like, and I think we've done so much of that. But maybe this is another way to say it. I've now built. So my brother and I, together with my mom and dad, initially built GetSmarter, and we had a very kind of public success. We then had another business called Hubble Studios, which worked with an unbelievable CEO called Hans Geldenace, which we built and sold. So we've had two kind of really like slam dunk business kind of build and exits. This one in Valencia has been so hard. Like, it's been so hard. It's been unbelievable to try and affect change in the secondary school sector, with the politics that are at play, with the dynamics between parent, child, and school, with the unions, with the rigorous structure of prescribed curriculum and so on, has just been so unbelievably hard. And what we've been trying to do is to really push ourselves and others to see, like, can we get technology to do more of what humans have historically done, so that we can bring down the unit price, so that we can get high quality education to learners around the country with this bridge of technology.
Yeah.
And I can't believe how hard it's been, Pierre. Like, it's been mostly hard, with a couple of good moments, with a couple of breathing moments.
Yeah.
And I think that has created an experience that I just, it's almost difficult to describe, because there's different types of business hard. Like, one type of business hard is, oh, you're just working really hard. Another is just like, oh, you've got, clients coming in all the time, and it's kind of the barrage of information. It's that sense of just like too much going on. This one has been, whether it's been finance, whether it's been customers, whether it's been PR, whether it's been partners, whether it's been governments, just been like all coalescing.
Yeah.
And in its best, I would say that is, to come back to Peter Crone's quote, that is life presenting me with the people and circumstances to reveal where I'm not yet free. Because holy smokes, I've had a lot of resistance to the onslaughts. I've had a lot of resistance to the challenge and the discomfort of not knowing that we're going to be able to pay salaries at the end of the month. And I've had a lot of resistance to saying, can I just get away from this? And I think at its best, what this business experience has done for me is it has forced previous ways of being into such an exaggerated kind of core. The exaggerated nature of the experience has pushed my previous ways of being into such corners that I can't but open up and be like, okay, now I'm just going to sit in this fire, and I'm going to be with it. And it's the only words I have tattooed. I have a long sleeve, but the only words I have tattooed here are, can I be with this?
Yeah.
Can I be with this experience? And that's not to say that you don't take action and move, but the first question is, as I'm experiencing something that I find affronting, that I find challenging, like, can I be with this? Can I actually just let my system, can I let this feeling envelop me? Can I let it go all the way? And can I actually, what I've experienced now is, can I let it pass through me? And then can I make decisions, and can I take decisive action? But anytime I'm just avoiding a feeling, that I'm just trying to maneuver away from a place of being, from an experience, that's when I typically get myself into a lot more trouble.
Yeah.
And so maybe I can give you something really practical, like when we had some unbelievable media onslaughts 2.5 odd years ago. One of the things that I would say is the most terrifying for me is to have my public reputation smeared way beyond my control. As someone who likes harmony and who's quite a likable guy, and like I think I'm quite personable, and I really like people. I'm interested in people, so get on well with people, and it's kind of the social vibe. To be just like publicly smashed was as affronting as anything that I've ever experienced. Like, now there's the situation where I'm being publicly humiliated and I cannot control it.
Yeah.
And so my initial response, because I couldn't be with that feeling, was, let me work even harder. Let me try to take more defensive action. Let me try to give more counter narratives in the media, etc. And honestly, Pierre, it just made it worse. Like, it made it way worse. It kept on fueling the fire. Why? Because I refused to actually feel the feeling, which is just like humiliated to my core.
Yeah.
Disappointed to my core. Devastated, embarrassed to my core. And what's been so interesting is that as time's gone on, we've had another very minor comparatively, but another experience with media in the last 2 months. One of the decisions I made right at the beginning was like, I'm going to just, when a feeling arises in me like this, I'm going to just let it, I'm going to stand in the full flame of that feeling and let it literally burn through me and see where I land. And the most amazing thing has happened is like, it's just a feeling. Like, here I am, 41 years old, like I can feel humiliated and I can let it fully course through my veins and it will pass. And then I can take action, and then I can move, and then I can be, and then I can do what is best for the business, for the customers, for everyone in between. But as soon as I'm operating from that aversive space, as soon as I'm trying to just maneuver around the experience and the embodiment of a feeling, honestly, Pierre, it just gets worse, and it's just gotten worse. So this is a very long, non-linear way of even answering your question. I think we've gone into completely different territory.
No, it's fantastic. Like, it's so helpful. Like that, not avoiding the feeling, if we can just mirror it back to you, like not avoiding the feeling, entering into it. And I keep on thinking when I listen to you speak, like how you light up when you talk about education and how passionate you are actually about it, how deeply passionate you are about it, and how hard it is at the same time. And it's also, to repeat our conversation from earlier, like the way society tends to work is if something is hard, it means you shouldn't be doing it, which is not the truth. Like something is hard, but it can still be really good and good for you and opening you up to who you're supposed to be. Yeah.
And exactly on that point. So there's nothing hard, actually. There's nothing hard out there. There are experiences that we in our own psyches deem as difficult, as unenjoyable, as anything in between. But they're just, like, let me bring it back to myself. Like, there's just people writing words about me on the computer. That's what's happened. That's what's actually happening. They're just words. My experience of it is of really hard, is of humiliation, is of all the things that I've mentioned.
Yeah.
And I know this is starting to get into kind of somewhat Zen territory, but like it just is. And I think that the thing that I've seen in myself is the tendency to want to think like, either I need to avoid that feeling entirely, so I'm going to work really hard to counteract it, or I must try and mentally outmaneuver it, and I'm going to say 5 affirmations every morning, like I'm a good person, this is a thing, like, but actually all I'm trying to do is avoid the feeling. And so we've got some of these tools that we use, these tactics that we use are, they're lovely, and I'll go exercise it out, or I'll go do whatever, but so much of it's just like, can I just be with this?
Yeah.
Like step 1, can I just sit with this fully? And then, let me make some decisions from there. But I just don't know that as time goes on, as I get older, like I'm just not sure that there's anything that's intrinsically hard. There's stuff and there's consequences to the stuff that we do and the decisions that we make.
Yeah.
But hard is here. Hard is an orientation. Hard is a perception and a response. Like shame is a response. It just is.
Yeah. I really like that. Yeah, that gives me a lot of food for thought. That was it. Seneca said we suffer more in our imagination than in reality. Right. So the way we perceive things, we experience it. Yeah.
And I think most of our lived experience is in our imagination, is in our heads, is of our perception of things. Like reality just is. Like it's benevolent. It just is. And I'm not saying there aren't undesirable things that happen, and especially when it comes to vulnerable populations, I would be the first person to step in as it relates to especially any sort of physical abuse or challenges with kids and so on. Like there are things that we should stand up for as a society, no question. But particularly as adults, things just are.
Yeah.
Like they are, and we can be with that.
Yeah, that's powerful. Tell me, Rob, what lies ahead for you?
I feel a lot of energy and a lot of excitement at the moment. Business-wise, like I said, we can't mention the specifics, but there's something fairly big coming in the next year.
Give us a clue.
It's still in education.
Oh, come on.
And it's not about a technological revolution.
Oh, nice. That's quite cool. Not an app.
It's not an app. So yeah, I really can't say more than that right now, but I'm very excited about what I think this will be a first of its kind in South Africa, which I'm feeling really optimistic about. I am personally, I'm fascinated by men's work, and so
Oh
I've
yeah.
been doing that informally for a while. I'm going to start doing a little bit more of that, and just spending some spare time that I have doing some more of that, and starting to firm up on a few programs for men and that sort of thing, which I in some conversations about at the moment, which I'm really looking forward to. Um, I've committed to getting back into blogging, sharing thoughts. I've blogged for and spent, for probably 2 years, was writing an article a week, and just found it a really wonderful practice. I then have been out of it for probably 2 and a bit years, and I've just got to the point where I'm really feeling called back into it, and wanting to honor that feeling and that call. And I've invested in a bunch of companies, and I've been loving that work. And what I think is so fascinating about that work is it's a kind of space between investing and having the opportunity to coach and to be in partnership with great CEOs and people who are building businesses. So I really thrive and love the work that I do in that space. I am on the home front. I am just so excited to be trying to push, yeah, probably unsurprising, but like pushing the boundaries and what
Yeah.
what we do with our kids and how they experience their education. And I've seen it very much as our responsibility to kind of, maybe this is another way to say it. I think that their education is my responsibility. It's not the school that I send them to.
Yeah.
They are a role player in that, but their education is much broader than passing the matric exam.
Yeah.
And I'm really feeling the delight and the call of that. I have a wonderful not-for-profit that we've recently launched with 3 incredibly talented individuals, which is called Earth Agency.
Oh yeah.
And it's a group that is at the intersection of conservationists, really great storytellers and artists that are focused on bringing a lot more mass attention to the small niche areas in conservation and biodiversity that often get completely overlooked. So, since selling the business, I've spent quite a lot of time in kind of philanthropy and supporting conservation efforts. I just love the environment. And one of the things I've seen is that there are a few causes that get all of the money, all of the attention. Just think rhinos.
Yeah.
It captures people's hearts and imagination, and that's where just unbelievable amounts of money goes. But, things like the Clan William sandfish, that is an absolute keystone species in the Western Cape, that when they go, we've got so many downstream implications, excuse the pun, but like so many downstream implications and problems that are going to emerge. But the problem is that doesn't capture most people's hearts. And what we've landed on is that by bringing unbelievable artists and visual storytellers together with causes, we can get a lot more attention for these causes that actually have an outsized impact and that have just unbelievable scientists and conservationists on the projects. So I'm feeling really bullish about that. And then my wife and I have bought a piece of land in Hout Bay that we are ultimately turning into a wolf sanctuary and a space for yoga, meditation, plant medicine. There's going to be a lovely restaurant. There's going to be 12 consulting rooms for really interesting practitioners on. That's a long-term project. It's still going to be another 3 or 4 years before that it comes to fruition. But at least for me, most excitingly, all of that activity is taking place around a rescue wolf sanctuary.
Yeah.
And I have a deep passion for wolves and wolf dogs, of which there are thousands and thousands in South Africa that are living in domestic homes that really shouldn't be.
Yeah.
And creating a sanctuary space for them that their energy can be part of the medicine of that space is something that we're just super excited about.
Sure, that's a lot. Like not working hard at all, it seems. Okay, so I've got to like wrap us up a little bit. A couple of like rapid fire questions, popcorn questions. I know your kids are still pretty young, but what advice do you give your kids, or will you give your kids?
Feel it all.
Feel it all. I like that. Feel it all.
Yeah.
What is a book that
Kids incidentally don't have a problem with
yeah, that's just true, right?
at least not when they're my sort of kids'
Yeah.
age.
Don't
And it's this interesting space between that transition out of infanthood into childhood into adolescence is emotional regulation. And yet, what I think we've done mostly as a society is regulate so much that there's no space and no containers for the expression.
Yeah.
So that maybe just a bit of a clarification, like feel it all, but within context that make it suitable and safe and so much more.
Yeah. There's a lot of wisdom that needs to go with that. What is a book that changed your life?
The War and Art by Stephen Pressfield is my. If any listeners have not read that, please read it. It is just one of the most profound books. It is a book allegedly for writers and artists, but it's for everyone. It's absolutely for everyone. It's about bringing our essence to the world, and it's about the layers of resistance that come up in response to what is truly bringing our gifts into the manifest. And it is just it's so practical, it's so inspiring, and it's poetry to read.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So The War and Art by Stephen Pressfield.
That's fantastic. I'll make sure to link to that. That's really good. War and Art. I haven't read that. I should do that. Okay, this one is just for me more than anybody else because I like really good restaurants. Favorite restaurant in all the world?
Oh, Piers. I'm actually not much of a foodie. Hey, I'm almost a bit embarrassed to say that, but like, I just love a good braai. I love a simple steak. I really struggle with fancy food. There's 13 courses, and just like, can I just have something of substance, please?
Some max calories.
Give me some protein. That's So let me try. For a local shout out, one of my. I'll give you two. So in Hout Bay, there is a place called Southeaster, which makes the best croissants in the world. Like, I've had the privilege of going to many places. Like, there's no better croissants than Southeaster Bakery in Hout Bay. And then the best coffee is Hout Bay Coffee, which is just around the corner. So you just can't go wrong with those two.
Okay, Hout Bay Coffee Southeaster on my list. Thanks.
Yeah.
One last one. Quote to live by. You mentioned Peter Crow. I can't pronounce his surname.
Yes.
Is that your quote to live by? Do you have another one?
Oh, I'd say that's the primary one, but maybe another one that captured me probably a year ago is a quote by Carl Jung, and I'll paraphrase, but it is said that in order for our branches to reach heaven, our roots need to go all the way down to hell.
Oh, ooh, that's awesome. I love that. Branches reach heaven, our roots need to go down to hell. That's fantastic. I really love that.
And again, for me, that's the invitation to embrace all of our humanity, that we especially intellectually want to orientate towards the things that are in the light and that are socially admired and that are seen positively at that particular point in time by the world. But there are many spectrums of our being, and we need to honor those. We need to be with those. We need to be in touch with those, and we need to allow for them, because if we don't, they will control us, but they will do it from the shadows, and they will claw from behind, and they will make you reactive, and they will make you volatile. And I think that to be a really integrated being, like, I want to be with all of my shadow and all of my light.
I love that. That's really awesome. Where can people find you, Rob? Are you online?
Not a lot at the moment, although, like I said, I am going to be making a bit more of a comeback. My website is busy being relaunched, which is robertpaddock.co.za. You can look up business activity, earthagency.org, valenciainstitute.com, uctonlinehighschool.com. We've got a few other kind of not-for-profit stuff in Genie, which is an edtech accelerator. You can find that at the .co.za domain, and Ishtar you will shortly be able to find at ishtar.co.za. That's the Healing Sanctuary, Wolf Space, etc.
Healing Sanctuary, Wolf Space. I love that.
That's the and then otherwise, I'm gonna start being a bit more present on LinkedIn again. I've never really done much on social media, but I think it is time to maybe rejoin the dizzy heights of all those platforms. So let's see.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for spending some time with me today and sharing how you find your way or keep on finding your way through the fog. And yeah, just being open and honest and raw. Really appreciate it, man. Very, very good.
Thanks so much for the work you're doing, Pierre, and thanks for the time today.
Awesome. Thank you.